Welcome, everyone, to Buddha Center. It's so wonderful to be here with you tonight to discuss the medicine that Buddha Shakyamuni came to the world 2,600 years ago to give to us to heal all of our pain and suffering. That medicine of method and wisdom that if we really apply ourselves to taking it, we can achieve the goals that Buddha has promised us that we can achieve, and that's freedom from suffering and the highest amount of happiness that is possible with the mind. And that is something that I'm interested in. And that's what keeps me coming here, to have a mind that doesn't have to worry, to have a mind that knows how to be reliable and really help everyone that I want to help, and really be able to show them how to achieve what I want to achieve, and that's freedom from suffering and a complete amount of happiness. So we have these teachings that Buddha Shakyamuni came to give us, and they've been passed down through an unbroken lineage right to us. And so how fortunate are we? So let's just take a moment to rejoice in the fact that when we look at the billions of human beings that there are, we're among a very small percentage that actually have a solution to the ailment that everyone has, and that's an ignorance that creates a situation that forces us into suffering and forces us not to have the highest amount of happiness, the most perfect love and compassion, the most perfect power, the most perfect wisdom. It forces us to not have those things. And we're here tonight to learn how to remove those things which keep us from our highest potential. So let's begin by setting the most beautiful motivation in the universe. The motivation that Arya Nagarjuna says is the highest ideal of the Mahayana, which is bodhicitta, a wish to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We find it defined just like that in Lord Maitreya's Abhisama Alamkara, the ornament for clear realization, wish for the highest enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, for the benefit of all sentient beings. And we've been talking a lot over the last few months about how one would actually cognitively change one's mind, change one's discrimination, so that it would be possible to have such a beautiful mind arise, which day and night would seek Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. So we've been talking about all of the steps necessary to get to the place where we could become a bodhisattva. And we know that we must become bodhisattvas in order to become Buddhas, because the entrance into the Mahayana path, the entrance into the great vehicle, is bodhicitta. And when you achieve this first aspiring bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment, at that moment, you're considered what's called a bodhisattva, a child of the Buddhas. So this incredible mind is something that we will eventually achieve in dependence upon some really specific steps. And that's what we've been talking about, because we're now dealing with the teachings for beings of great capacity in the Lamrim. And those teachings are held up with the foundation of the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity. And from that foundation of support, of understanding of our own plight and our own sufferings, we then can turn our minds to all sentient beings and recognize that they also have this same plight, this same suffering. Our loved ones have this same plight, this same suffering. And we expand our minds to understand that all sentient beings are our mothers, and we start to be able to discriminate beings in such a way that them being difficult does not give us a reason logically to not love them, to not have compassion for them. So let's try to begin by, even if it's in a contrived way, setting this motivation that I'm here tonight in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. I'm listening to these teachings intently in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So with this incredible motivation, that think of how few beings in the universe would ever even hear of, let alone know about the steps that are necessary to get to it. Thinking about this incredible motivation that His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that if at the time of death we can generate, we won't go to an unfortunate rebirth. Let's begin with this motivation, familiarize our minds with this motivation so that we have a mental basis that becomes a fertile ground that can eventually have this mind that aspires to enlightenment sprout from it, sprout from this fertile ground, and it will become a main mind that we have day and night. It won't be a mental factor that is something supporting main mind. It'll be an actual main mind that, that then makes everything that we do a cause for transcendent liberation, a cause for complete Buddhahood. So this path of method and wisdom that Buddha Shakyamuni came to teach us, passed down through the Nalanda Pandits, passed through the various lineages of the Pali tradition, the Dharmagupta lineage, and the Mulasarvastivadi tradition or lineage that we study in, passed through all of these incredible lineages to us. So we're so fortunate to be here. This teaching of method and wisdom that Buddha Shakyamuni passed through in all these various ways, and then eventually down through the Tibetan tradition into us, in all these various ways, teachings to the capacities of disciples, but recognizing at the end of the day, Buddha Shakyamuni came to this world to teach one path, and that is a path to complete enlightenment, unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment, which is Buddhahood. So this is kind of the name of the game. This is why we're here tonight, to figure out what the steps are and we need to take in order to achieve exactly what I think that you and I would both agree upon would be a desired goal. So tonight I'd like to begin. In my studies, I was looking at the first Panchen Lama, Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun's text called Instructions on Tsongkhapa's Three Principal Aspects of the Path, Essence of All the Scriptures, Quintessence of Helping Others. And it's an amazing short text. It's a meditation manual on the three principal paths with the topics of the Lam Rim, of course, kind of are always mixed in with those two traditions, because we know that we need to have the three principal paths in order to achieve complete Buddhahood. We know that we have to have the teachings for beings of three capacities in order to achieve complete Buddhahood. So, of course, they're going to have the information that overlaps. So this first Panchen Lama, so we know that, or we can say fourth Panchen Lama. So we'll, after we go through the preliminaries, we'll sort that out a little bit, because I think it's time to just explain the history of what that means, why sometimes we say first Panchen Lama, sometimes we say fourth Panchen Lama, the second Panchen Lama, sometimes we say fifth Panchen Lama. So we'll take a look at the history and a 5-minute summary of that to understand what that means, because we rely upon the master Panchen Lama's texts, and it's important for us to know, well, who are they and when were they around, and what did they have to say. So when we look at Panchen Lama's Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun's text, we find it in Cutting Through Appearances. This is translated by again Jeffrey Hopkins, and we find this is a book that he did with the incredible master Geshe Lundrut Zopa, Geshe Sopa, as you would all know, but technically his name is Geshe Supa, but he became to be known as Geshe Sopa. And in this section, when we find the reliance upon the teacher, I find there's an incredibly beautiful kind of reasoning that's made that can help us connect to our root lamas, and can help us connect to the merit field in a way that I found beautiful. So I wanted to share that with you this evening. Without further ado, hold on one second. I sectioned this off in a way so that we could understand how to do this. Just give me a moment. I guess I did have it sectioned off. Okay. Okay, so now it says, so now let's imagine in the space in front of us, all the holy enlightened beings. We were saying we're going to set our motivation to become Buddhas for the sake of all sentient beings. And when we think of the merit field in the space in front of us, the holy enlightened masters, we think of our root lamas, we think of the lineage from Buddha Shakyamuni through the Nalanda tradition and the extensive deeds lineage and the profound view lineage and the lineage of blessings. We think about all of these lineages. You can even think of it in a vast, vast way of, the Pali tradition, Dharmagupta lineage, Mulla Sarvastavadi. I mean, you can really, really just think of these enlightened masters in all of this tradition, and they serve as our kind of role models, as beings who were exactly like us, but figured out what Buddha Shakyamuni had to say, and figured out what Buddha Shakyamuni meant by what he said, and then applied those teachings to their minds and were able to achieve the realizations Buddha Shakyamuni promised, and then wrote about them or then taught us about them. So it's so important for us to always, when we look at this poem we've been studying, The Foundation of All Good Qualities, Lama Tsongkhapa's Source of All My Good, we see that it begins with the foundation of all good qualities. The source of all my good is my kind Lama. And we know that it ends with saying that in all my lives, may I never be separated from my perfect Lamas. So this is really the key to entering the door to being able to really understand the teachings and how to practice, is having a qualified Lama. And we know that the merit field is full of qualified enlightened beings. When we look at those different lineages I just spoke about, and when we talk about the 35 Buddhas and the highest yoga tantra deities, yogic performance action tantra deities, protector deities, these are all beings whose minds have been matured and purified, perfected in dependence upon these teachings that we just have to apply to our own minds. We just haven't done so yet. So in order to feel a real connection, to feel moved by the merit field, sometimes when we read inspiring things like Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun's meditation, because this is really a meditation manual, this text, it'll inspire us and allow us to kind of understand what we're trying to connect to and why we're trying to visualize it and have it so firm in our minds, so that in all of our lives we are never kind of forced into situations where we're meeting with unqualified teachers or teachers who are giving us wrong views. We want to make sure that we're always meeting with those teachers with the 10 excellent qualities that we find in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara by Lord Maitreya that a teacher should really possess. So may we always be connected with those lamas. So the Panchen Lama says, okay, meditate continuously on the gatherings of lamas and deities visualized in the space in front of you. So again, when we start the teachings, we always imagine the merit field in the space in front of us. I won't go into the details of the names of all of the holy beings in the Nalanda tradition and the Tibetan tradition and so forth, but whoever you consider an enlightened being, and make sure Buddha Shakyamuni, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Chenrezig in person, beings like this are in the space in front of you, beings who are evolved, beings who have matured, and visualize them in the space in front of you and think. In general, the foundation of all good qualities is faith. Particular, the foundation of all accumulations of goodness in this life and the fortune, the fundamental support of all achievements, supreme and common, the excellent cause of producing, keeping, increasing, and completing all stages and paths is proper reliance on an excellent spiritual guide. Therefore, at the beginning, I must experience reliance upon a spiritual guide. Such reliance is the basis of the path. These spiritual guides of mine are actually Buddhas. In the precious tantras, the completely perfect Buddha says that in the degenerate era, the conqueror Vajradhara shows himself in the physical form of virtuous spiritual guides and performs deeds for the sake of transmigrators in cyclic existence. Just so, these virtuous spiritual guides of mine are only showing a form of body different from Vajradhara's customary body. Except for that, they are the conqueror Vajradhara, who in the degenerate era displays the physical form of virtuous spiritual guides in order to take care of those who did not have the fortune actually to see the Buddha. So we're thinking of these teachers like Namgyal Khensa Geshe Wandak Rinpoche and Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche and Geshe Dorje Damdu Rinpoche and Umzala Geshe Aga Rinpoche, Jeffrey Hopkins, His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, Geshe Yeshe Tapke Rinpoche, Genpalden Drapa Rinpoche, all of these incredible, holy, enlightened beings that we've had contact with, that we've been able to meet with, that we don't want to let down. These beings, as it says here, we can look at as actual emanations of Vajradhara. And we'll go on to read a little bit more of that. And when we think of these beings in that the whole merit field is a manifestation of our root Lama, we start to make sure that we are always connecting with just that. These kind fundamental lamas of mine are not only in fact real Buddhas, their kindness is even greater than all the Buddhas. If all the former conquerors and the bodhisattvas forsook me, unable to tame me, these kind fundamental lamas, not able to bear it because of their compassion, perform the deeds of the conqueror. Even if Buddha actually came, the deep doctrines he would teach would not be better expressed. In the past, our teacher, the Buddha, the king of conquerors, for the sake of only one stanza of doctrine, even put 1,000 iron nails into his body and used his body to burn 1,000 lamps. Without regard, he gave up his son, his wife, his own body, and all usable things, whatever he had. He had to do unthinkably difficult deeds. Without my having to do any such difficult deeds, these kind, fundamental lamas, like a father or mother teaching his or her child, liberally teach me deep precepts, the great vehicle doctrines, complete and without mistake. If I can meditate on their teaching, it can easily give me the states of high status and even liberation from cyclic existence as well as omniscience. There is no way at all to return such kindness. Meditate thus until the hairs of your body rise and tears well from your eyes. So this is the connection we have to this spiritual lineage we're imagining in the space in front of us, not imagining it as just a movie, imagining they're really here in the room with us, looking into our eyes with immense loving kindness and compassion, looking into our eyes, just knowing what the next step is for us on our spiritual journey and knowing exactly what it is we need to be told to evolve. Thinking in this way, now imagine that you share this gift with all sentient beings. We said we want to be here for the sake of all sentient beings. May I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Now imagine that you share this gift with all sentient beings. And we've been doing a lot of work on bodhicitta and looking at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, that begins with equanimity and then moves on to recognizing sentient beings are our mothers, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, love through the force of attraction, great compassion, the extraordinary attitude or altruism, and then bodhicitta. So we've been looking at this practice and trying to tame our minds more and more and more so that we can then equally see all sentient beings as an object of observation, if you will, that we would like to see free from suffering and having the highest state of happiness, no matter who they are, without a biased thought in our minds. And this is so hard for someone like me. And thank goodness that Namgyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, going all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni in an unbroken lineage, came to share with me steps that I could take and steps that you can take, because they're universal steps that we can use to evolve our minds so that it's not so hard when those folks are difficult to want them to have happiness. It's very hard for us when we see someone as a monster in our minds and we build them up to make them even worse and worse in our minds. It's hard for us to want them to have happiness and be free from suffering. And unless we can figure out how to do that with everyone in the universe, we won't be able to become a Buddha, because we won't be able to become a bodhisattva. And even the hearers and solitary realizers have immeasurable compassion. They have a compassion that extends. They just don't have the kind of compassion that catapults them into an extraordinary attitude that says, I'll take this task upon myself that will will be to free all sentient beings from suffering and take them to a state of happiness. But there is an immeasurable amount of love that's there. So we have to employ the steps in our mind to try to make this manifest if we want to become a Buddha. So let's try this for a moment. Let's try to use all the practices that we've gone through, the uncertainty of when we look at the 6 types of suffering and the uncertainty of our lives, and we see all of these relationships have been so many different things in so many different lives since beginningless time. And we've been taught through our practice of equanimity that everyone, we should be equally willing to benefit. If we're willing to benefit the person we love more than anyone in this world at this moment, we should be equally willing to benefit the person we find the most distasteful based on logic and reasoning, which we won't go through right now. But when we're thinking about love and compassion, and we're thinking about the generosity of the Dharma, giving the Dharma, being generous and saying, I want to give you, these teachings to others. I want to be able to share this Dharma. I want to be able to share these concentrations, renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness with all sentient beings, because I know that they're the only medicine that will actually cure the illness of the ignorance which keeps us asleep completely, the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. So we can share this teaching with others in such a way that we use the Lam Rim to guide us. So we begin thinking about sharing it with our friends, those we feel closest to. Then we move on to those who we consider strangers or neutrals. And then we move on to those difficult beings, and we imagine that we bring each and every one of them here to share this teaching, to be able to hear this teaching, to be able to cool their minds off, to be able to, lessen the afflictions. That's what Dharma practice is. When we look at the old Kadampa tradition, Lord Atisha and Dron Tompa, that when they're asked, Master Dron Tompa, what is Dharma practice? He said that which lessens the afflictions. So imagine that we bring every single sentient being here in the universe in that order mentioned, friends, neutrals, and then difficult people, and then fill in the rest of the other types of beings that you just don't have a clue about. Hell beings, 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, surrounding hells, the hungry ghosts, animals that you have no clue about, other humans that you don't have a clue about, and demigods, gods, formless realm beings. Imagine that you bring all of those beings here to share this gift of the Dharma with them. Imagine that you actually have the ability to connect with each and every one of them the way that you'll be able to when you become a Buddha. When you say, I want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, it's not saying something silly. It's not silly because you can become a Buddha and you will become a Buddha. And you say, for the sake of all sentient beings. Well, the object of observation of Buddha's love and compassion is all sentient beings. So the Buddha is always working and has no choice but to work, because that's what the Bodhisattva's path is ingrained in his or her mind, has no choice but to work for the sake of all sentient beings. Those that we would see as the good and those that we would see as the bad, the Buddha would only see as a being who needs help. And we have to always remember that when we find beings distasteful, if we can think of, oh, they're just beings who need help like us. They're beings who are under the control of their afflictions like us. They aren't their afflictions. They're just under the control of their afflictions like us. If they could have this medicine that Buddha Shakyamuni brought to this world, they would never have to suffer and act in the way that they're acting, which is definitely coming from, in terms of physical actions, when you look at some of these folks that are having such a hard time and you would label as bad, their minds are definitely disturbed and not at peace based on outward actions. So when you see outward actions you find disturbing, violent, wrong, just remember that those are coming from a place that is not that person. It's from the afflictions, the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience, the self-grasping ignorance that's watering and living right next to the self-cherishing attitude that's just making all the wrong decisions, just trying to seek out the same thing that you and I are trying to seek out, and just when we find people who are doing it in extreme violent ways, they're just doing it in a way that will never get them to their goal. But we have to remember another strange thing, which is hard to kind of take sometimes. But the fact is that their outlandish, awful behavior is, yes, going to keep them in cyclic existence. But our great behavior, if it's not coupled with the wisdom realizing emptiness, and if it's not coupled with the desire to emerge and kind of the understanding of these things, will also just be a cause for cyclic existence, because we're both under the sway of afflictions. Sometimes afflictions are louder than others, but afflictions are afflictions. And if you have afflictions, you have what's called a cooperative condition for rebirth, and there will be one if you have afflictions present. So yeah, if we haven't gotten rid of the subtlest kind of afflictions, we will have gross forms of afflictions again, and we'll be acting just like those folks that we consider monsters. And they may be acting like us, thinking that we're monsters. And this is why samsara is disgusting. And if we can put things in that perspective, we can see someone in front of us who was so loving to us in the past, because of the Buddha nature that we all have. We all have good qualities. We all have love. We just haven't matured. We all have compassion. We haven't matured. And in previous lives, those people we consider monsters loved us and took care of us more than anybody we could have even imagined. So we see that we all have this loving mind, and comes out in various levels, and it doesn't shine at its fullest potential because of our bias, because we don't have equanimity, because we don't have unbiased love and compassion, because we haven't generated a mind like it. And it's because of that our minds aren't at peace. The bifurcation, as Master Dharmakirti in the Pramadavartika Karika says, that first I grasp at I, and my I, and then other, and then independence upon that, there's attachment, and then there's aversion. I'm attached to me, and push away that which isn't mine or me, which is other. And there's a bifurcation that takes place, and independence upon that, all of samsara just erupts. So if I'm grasping at myself as being inherently existent, I'm grasping at my hand as being inherently existent. If I grasp at the aggregates as being inherently existent, I will grasp at I as inherently existent. So if you're like me, you have still self-grasping ignorance. And because I still have self-grasping ignorance, it's hard for me to make my mind work the way these books say it should. So it's this work we're doing that allows our minds to start to become more realistic and operate in a fashion that actually tallies with the way that would get us the results that we're looking for. So we bring all sentient beings here in the 6 realms of cyclic existence. And now imagine that the space in front of us is transformed into Rajagriha Vulture Peak Mountain, where the second turning of the wheel of Dharma was given by Buddha Shakyamuni. We know the first turning of the wheel of Dharma was given in Varanasi, India. The Four Noble Truths were taught. The second turning of the wheel of Dharma was taught in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, where the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra was taught. And then the third turning of the wheel of Dharma was taught in Vaishali, where 10th ground bodhisattvas got up and asked Buddha Shakyamuni questions to clarify some things. And basically the mind-only school view was taught, and that's called the wheel of good differentiation, or the wheel of good interpretation, where the Buddha actually interpreted his own teaching. So when we find the teachings on Buddha nature in the mind-only school there, second turning of the wheel of Dharma, a Madhyamaka system looking at tenets for those techies out there, and then the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, primarily catering to the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika school students. But here, now we're talking about the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the Buddha taught the definitive truth that all phenomena lack inherent existence. And we have to, and I know I say this every week, but it's really important when we read the Heart Sutra to understand that the Buddha didn't come to this world to teach nihilism. Nihilism's been around forever, and it'll be around for a long time to come. And the Buddha definitely did not come to teach nihilism. The Buddha came to teach that things are empty of nature. So what is this nature? The Buddha didn't say, things are empty of existence. The Buddha said empty of nature when we're looking at the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. So when we find all of these no, 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 no's in the Heart Sutra, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, we have to refer back to what the initial statement was: empty of nature. No stands for empty. There's no, and what does nature stand for? An inherent nature, an intrinsic nature, a nature that's able to stand on its own, a nature established from the object's own side, established by way of its own characteristics, something that's substantially, truly existent. So these are all words that the Prasangika school says are all hypothetical synonyms, because none of these things exist. True existence doesn't exist. Inherent existence doesn't exist. Intrinsic existence doesn't exist. So when the Buddha says all this no stuff, the Buddha is talking about there's no inherently existent suffering, intrinsically existent suffering, no suffering established by way of its own character, no suffering established from the side of the object. And when we look at then, if all of these things here, the Buddha says don't have objective existence, intrinsic existence, inherent existence, existence by way of their own character, existence from their own side, independent existence. The Buddha is saying that things don't have a mode of existence that we naturally think that they do. So when we look at, then, if the Buddha isn't saying that things don't exist, the Buddha is saying then there must be a mode of existence. If we're saying there is existence, there must be a mode of existence that's different than our natural way of perceiving things. We naturally, from an appearance sensory perspective, have an appearance of inherent existence, that everything exists from its own side, independently from a designating mind. We feel, even at a sensory level, before we even take it to any kind of conceptual thought, there's an appearance of true existence, which doesn't tally with reality. So things are appearing in a way that doesn't tally with reality. And then we apprehend them in our mind in a way that doesn't tally with reality either. We feel that ourselves, other people, and things other than persons all inherently exist from their own side. And when we look to what the mode of existence is, if it's not that they exist from their own side, if the Buddha came to say that things don't have this mode of existence from their own side, then we have to find an alternative to that which does tally with reality. And that is dependent origination. Dependent origination, where we find that results depend upon causes, wholes depend upon parts, and things depend upon mere imputation by the mind. And that's the most subtle level of dependent origination that the Buddha truly came to explain to us. At the highest level of tenets, the Buddha said that those causes and conditions and those wholes and parts are merely designated as this or that by the mind in dependence upon a collection that serves as a basis of designation. But the designated object and the basis of designation are mutually exclusive. So this is what we have to come to find. When we look at a chair, we see, is chair able to be found within the basis of designation? When we try to find where chair, is there an intrinsically existent chair able to be found within its basis of designation? We seek it out and we aren't able to find it. within its collection of parts, intrinsically one with its parts. And then when we take all of its parts away and we say chair doesn't make any sense anymore. So we see that there's this relationship that we never thought was possible before. And that's that there's a basis of designation that we're merely imputing as this or that. And there's nothing that inherently exists from the side of the object that's separate from a mere imputation, a mere imputation of the mind. And that does not mean that it's just all in our mind imagined, and that there's no external phenomena. It just means that the thing that we think exists from its own side can't possibly function if it does intrinsically exist the way that it appears. So I won't go into any more, but if we are starting from a standpoint that's wrong, from a sensory perspective, even the sounds we're hearing are appearing to our ear consciousness to intrinsically exist. Even when we taste food, it tastes, it appears. I know that sounds like a strange. It appears to our sense consciousness, our tongue consciousness, to intrinsically exist, a delicious food. And then we get it, to our conceptuality, and we say, "Oh, this is intrinsically delicious." But the food is coming in, or it's intrinsically disgusting, but it's coming into our tongue, appearing intrinsically existent. So this is going to take a lot to undo, and a lot of studying to undo. And if we're starting from this place that's so wrong, imagine all of the mistakes we make, and why, if we're concretizing these things in such a way, we're so fooled by them to value them, to be able to think they're something we should be attached to, or there's something that we should be disgusted by. Because we're starting from a premise that's wrong. We're starting from this idea that says things inherently exist. And then we have an inappropriate attention that says that this is attractive, this is unattractive, this is pleasant, this is unpleasant. We have this attention that it kind of is taking place, or something that isn't in an appropriate attention that's just a carryover words, or if I don't find it attractive or unattractive, I at least think it inherently exists. And from that concrete position, I could then decide it's attractive or unattractive at any moment, depending on my whims. And when I have this inappropriate attention and I concretize an object and give it qualities it can't possibly have, and exaggerate its good qualities and become attached to it, and exaggerate its bad qualities and become averse to it, that kind of mind mess makes me run towards things and run away from things and create all kinds of karma, mental intention, and then intended action take place that's contaminated. Because any action that I do that's under the influence of afflictions is contaminated, and any contaminated action under the influence of afflictions will then give rise to samsaric rebirth. So we see that this is the process. And if we remove that which is the cooperative condition, this self-grasping ignorance, from the cycle that, causes us to have craving and grasping and then a new rebirth over and over and over again, if we can remove that which is kind of necessary, remove that thing necessary for that process to take place that thrusts us into cyclic existence, if we remove that ingredient, we no longer have that potential existence that can occur. And when we look at the 12 links of dependent origination, we see that as soon as we remove ignorance, then the karma is removed, and then the consciousness is removed, when we look at it in terms of the 12 links and the order of the 12 links of dependent origination, which we won't go into. So we need to figure out how to get rid of that ignorance that grasps at things in a way that doesn't tally with reality, because it's from that place that samsara will always keep happening. We will always be thrust into a set of contaminated aggregates out of our control if we have self-grasping ignorance, because from the self-grasping ignorance, we know we have the coarse afflictions and the contaminated karmas that throw us into cyclic existence. So we have to figure out how to have our minds tally with what the Heart Sutra says they should tally with, recognizing this kind of dual aspect of every entity of conventional and ultimate truth. And the entity's ultimate truth is that it's empty of inherent existence, and its objective existence is emptiness of objective existence. And what does that mean when we look at it conventionally? Things are just mere conventions. They're just merely imputed by the mind in dependence upon a basis of designation that serves, in dependence upon a collection that serves as its basis of designation. We just have to keep thinking about this. This is coming from my mind, but there is externality, and we think about, how can my dog, who has consciousness and eye consciousness and has a mental consciousness, how can my dog think my shoe is a toy? That's definitely a shoe. No, it's definitely a shoe for my convention. For the dog's convention, it's definitely a toy. And if things can have this flexibility, they can't have intrinsic existence. They must be coming from the subject. There must be, if there's stuff out there and parts out there, if my dog, who's a conscious being, and myself are having completely mutually exclusive discriminations of an object, and that object has to have flexibility that I don't think that it has in my normal, ordinary way of thinking. If the flower in the garden I can see is so-so, is something that when another person walks up to it is blown away by its beauty and its fragrance, same object, then that object can't have any intrinsic beauty. We can both agree that there's a flower there, but then when we look at what happens from self-grasping ignorance and concretizing, I can then say, oh, that's so-so, because I'm not really seeing it as something that I'm finding attractive. But somebody else with the karma to see it as so beautiful and so radiant and lovely and smells so beautiful, then can turn it into something that exaggerates the qualities, or I'm lessening the qualities. Who knows who's doing what? But we're both disagreeing upon what inherently exists in terms of the qualities of the object that's the same object that we're both agreeing upon as a flower. I'm saying so-so, someone else is saying just extremely magnificent and miraculous, and someone who's allergic to it thinks it's awful. Get it out of the room. Even the sight of it makes them start to seize because of kind of a memory of it. Same object, different perceptions. The object is flexible because it doesn't inherently exist, because the basis of designation is just a mere collection that we're imputing as this or that. It doesn't exist intrinsically from its own side. But according to conventions, karma works, cause and effect works. It's not like a dream where cause and effect doesn't matter, nothing's sequential. You can be in Italy and then in India in 1 second. We know that cause and effect works in terms of conventional truth, in terms of conventions, and that we operate within conventions. The ripening paths are how we operate within conventions in order to become a bodhisattva and eventually become a Buddha through the bodhisattva path. But we have to understand that all of these conventions that we're adhering to are veiled. They're deceptive consciousness. They're not real in terms of ultimate truth, because when we seek out their realness under investigation of ultimate analysis, we'll find that they're unfindable under an ultimate analysis, in terms of existing intrinsically, in terms of being exactly what we think that they are. Yet, when we go to conventional analysis, we'll find that these veiled truths, these things that are veiling what's actually there, an emptiness of intrinsic existence, that every single phenomenon in the universe has the same peace, the same level of peaceful vibration in terms of its entity. We see there's this other side of conventional truth that we can't negate, and we have to be able to establish, because it's the basis for the ultimate truth. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. So just some thoughts to put in your mind, not to go overly difficult, but just some thoughts to put into your mind, to think about emptiness in a little bit more of a subtle way, and not just say, oh, things are empty because they dependently originate. Well, what do you mean they dependently originate? And when you ask that, usually people say, oh, well, it's just cause and conditions, cause and effect. And, we're still on the object if we're just saying cause and effect, and we're not getting to this mind designating, thought designation. And Rinpoche was always so kind, Namgyo Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, to make sure that we knew that things were merely imputed by the mind in dependence upon a collection that serves as the basis of a designation. And there's nothing intrinsically existent from the side of the object. I know there's people on, I know that Michael, who's on, who's heard all the teachings Rinpoche ever gave, and Priscilla has heard most of the teachings Rinpoche gave, and Lori's on, who heard a lot of the teachings Rinpoche gave. You'll know that Rinpoche would always say that things are not inherently existent. They are not truly established because they dependently originate. They are merely imputed by designating consciousness and dependence upon a collection that serves as its basis of designation. Rinpoche would say this, so merely designated by thought. And I just think it's such great medicine. But don't get the medicine wrong and think that it means that nothing exists, or it's all a dream, or it's all imaginary. Because things hurt, when you get hit with them. And Buddha's omniscience is made by cause and effect, by the removal of afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience along a path, a ripening and a liberating path. So make sure you can establish how I'm talking to you and everything works, and how someone goes through pathways to become a Buddha, whilst being able to establish that things are empty of inherent existence. Because if you can't establish karma and emptiness of inherent existence, you haven't realized the thought of Buddha Shakyamuni. And if you can't see that things can't possibly function unless they're empty of inherent existence, you won't really get what Arya Nagarjuna is talking about when he's explaining Buddha Shakyamuni's view. And hidden in this Heart Sutra are the 5 paths that we all must traverse in order to become Buddhas: the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. So let's read the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering. No path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, that mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala juve ne jo damba ne ngushe du ju nga yi du du jen ruba bala ma yi bu jin zi ne zong gan ro zo la cha ze lo aga samara ja chandara samara ebe aga samara ja. Aga samara ja chandara samara ya ve de ya dong gate gate para sangate bodhizo baba ganju sanji ga e de me do ji je lo ba do ji me ba do ji je wa do ji jagi ba ji me de ve ji dan ji je ning ga ye so ge rin do ja ji je wa da me do ne be jan dan de wa da ba jun jin bon zon zon jo ji da ji de jan den da de le jo. Now I'll make a mandala offering. And today, when we make the mandala offering, we will, inside the mandala offering, read the source of all my good. And we see it's a supplication throughout the source of all my good that's being made. So we'll add this supplication as when we look at the 6 preparations in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we find that the 6th preparation is this mandala offering and supplication. And within that, you can make various supplications that will aid you in your practice. So we'll do that inside the mandala offering today. And then that's what we're going to try. We'll try that out. Okay. So we'll make an outer mandala offering as a request for a teaching. Fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples, as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. And now we'll include this in the mandala offering. The source of all my good. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Bless me to receive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teachings. I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother has fallen into, and grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I am not well trained in the 3 moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the Bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I practice well the past shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus, the cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me then to always keep them, even if it costs my life. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me or outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I accumulate by teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay, so lucky to have this opportunity. It's not luck, it's merit. We've accumulated the causes and conditions to all be here tonight and to hear this medicine, to hear this nectar. And I don't say that to be poetic. It's just when these teachings are applied to a mind like mine and over almost 30 years now, and you see just how helpful they are. And you can look back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and just see it's only in dependence upon these teachings that I've been able to have a little bit more peace of mind and act a little bit more reasonably than I used to. And moving away from a place where I would be afraid to die, because of unpreparedness, and knowing that I have all the things that I need to be prepared for the time of death, knowing that, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama says that if you're my student, practice method and wisdom, practice compassion and the wisdom realizing emptiness. And I'm trying my best to practice those things so I don't have the fears that I used to have. I don't have the same concepts looming in my mind that when I thought, the things that I used to think would make me happy. Now that I know they don't, I'm much happier to know what reality really is. So we've been talking about, bless me to know that every single being, it's been my mother, has fallen into the same suffering life that I've recognized through my meditations, hopefully, once, this is, once one gets to the point in this part of the poem, there's an understanding that is there. And that's that you've meditated on the Four Noble Truths. Once you get to the great scope in the Lam Rim, there's an understanding there that you understand the 6 sufferings and the 8 sufferings and the 3 sufferings, and have a clear understanding of what the real messy problem is. And that's why it says that, I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life, and bless me to see that everyone my own mother has fallen into. Bless me to be able to generate this mind that aspires to enlightenment, to be able to first see that every single sentient being is my mother. So we've been talking about how we would create a palette of a mind that was smooth enough with equanimity, smooth enough with an idea that would say, hey, I would equally be willing to benefit everyone, to be able to then generate affection for everyone, going from, hey, I have an open mind about everyone. I'm not clinging to this person is a friend and feeling a certain way. And this person is an enemy and clinging a certain way. I've got a smooth palette to work from, an open mind. And from that open mind, one can grow the affection that then allows the platform for great compassion to occur, and altruism and bodhicitta. So it's amazing that we have these steps to first look at this equanimity and then recognizing sentient beings are our mother. And we've gone through that in such great detail. We looked at the Lankavatara Sutra, the descent into the Lanka Sutra, and we looked at Arya Sanga's levels of yogic deeds and Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And then we looked at the third Dalai Lama's, Sonam Gyatso's Essence of Refined Gold. And we looked at the Panchen Losang Yeshe's text to try to understand it more, and Pabunka Rinpoche's text, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama's text, 14th Dalai Lama's text, to understand more this concept that all sentient beings are our mothers. So I encourage you, if you didn't hear those teachings, you can go back and look at them over the last month or so. We went into in-depth analysis to prove logically previous lives, to prove logically that sentient beings have all been our mothers, to prove logically that sentient beings are our mothers, based on the fact that there's a continuum that the I has been merely designated upon, and it's just been an I being reborn. I was reborn, I was reborn, I was reborn. When I say I think it's Jeff, but the I is just mere designation. Merely designated in dependence upon 4 or 5 aggregates. It's among 4 or 5 aggregates that serve as a basis of designation. So there's just been a designated I. I think the designated I is just referring to Jeff, because I think Jeff inherently exists. And I think that Jeff, this kind of basis of designation over here that's making all of this noise is the true referent, is a truly existent referent of the label Jeff of the I. But the I is just a mere designation on a collection. When we establish that collection, then this has had a continuum, a beginningless continuum. We see that this continuum serves as a collection that the I is designated on. And then this I is just a non-associated compositional factor that's impermanent, that's just being labeled over and over and over again. So I, in 10 lifetimes ago, had a mother. That mother was my mom. Is that making sense? Because it's the I. There's a continuum. The I is just merely designated on that continuum. And at that time, there's a basis of designation, a collection of among 4 or 5 aggregates that's being labeled. And then that, if it was an egg birth or a human birth, had a mommy. And that mom was my mom because it was I. So I think that when we can start to logically think about these things, then it means more to us, and it doesn't just become like science fiction and just blind faith, because the Buddha never asked us to have blind faith. The Buddha said to cut and rub these teachings and look at them for accuracy. So we've moved on to this point where we've decided all sentient beings are our mothers. And I probably won't go into much instruction. What I'd like to clarify tonight is we're going to look at the Panchen Losang Yeshe's text, Swift Path, to go over this. We looked at Pabunka Rinpoche Dorje Chang's text last week and went over remembering the kindness of our mothers. And he had an incredible section on the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and Pabunka Rinpoche's liberation in the palm of your hand. And Namgyal Khensa Geshe Wandak Rinpoche told me that it was really something that served as a foundation for him as a young practitioner to start to be able to open up these Lamrim topics. So it was really amazing for me to hear that, because it was before I had met Rinpoche. It became very important to me as well as a text, or maybe after I had met him but not known him. There was a gap. He came to visit. I don't know when I found Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand exactly, but then I came to hear that it really was important to him as well as a preliminary guideline to the Lamrim and understandings of Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So I just felt so fortunate to have this connection with Rinpoche, with this text. And it was one of the foundational texts for me. So anyway, we looked at that to establish last week, remembering the kindness of sentient beings. And this week we're looking at what we're calling either the 2nd or the 5th Panchen Lama. So let me just clarify that whole story now, because I keep saying every week, either you call it the 1st or the 4th Panchen Lama, depending on how you enumerate them. So let me just put some light on what that is, who the Panchen Lama is. Let's go to around the 1600s. There'll be, characters on around this time. So this is the time of the 5th Dalai Lama. So the 4th Dalai Lama passes away, and the 5th Dalai Lama is to be found. And a master at the time Chuji Jetsun. We know Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun. Chuji Jetsun is the one who discovers the fifth Dalai Lama. And the fifth Dalai Lama, the great fifth Ngawang Losang Gyatso, discovers him as the reincarnation of the fourth Dalai Lama, and then becomes his main tutor, And then, hold on, I have to do this funny thing. So where am I in the story? Okay, so the Chuji Jetsun becomes the fifth Dalai Lama's tutor after recognizing him. And then the great fifth Dalai Lama we know from the elegant sayings of Manjushri, or the sacred words of Manjushri, the incredible text he wrote on the Lam Rim. But the fifth Dalai Lama wrote so many incredible, important texts and was really known for not being sectarian. He was born into a Nyingma family and really just promoted all of the different sects of the Dharma and so forth, and found greatness in all of the different lineages, and really shared that. So the fifth Dalai Lama, around the 1600s time, his tutor is Chuji Jetsun. And he decides that this teacher of his is a great being and an emanation of Amitabha, and then says that he will, be called the Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun. So he will bear this title, Panchen Lama, and then there will be reincarnations. So this Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun now is then considered the first, during their lifetime person that we said, hey, you're the Panchen Lama. And then the fifth Dalai Lama, who built the Potala Palace, the great fifth, gives Tashi Lumpo Monastery, who the first Dalai Lama, the Tashi Lumpo Monastery that the first Dalai Lama built, to the Panchen Lama. And then all of the Panchen Lamas after that become, Tashi Lumpo is their monastery where they're from. All the Panchen Lamas are then from Tashi Lumpo. So then when the first Panchen Lama, passes away, the fifth Dalai Lama looks for the reincarnation and finds then, if you're naming it numbers 1 and 2, so we're keeping it in this order for historical purposes for now. Fifth Dalai Lama, the great fifth, finds Panchen Losang Yeshe, who will now be the second Panchen Lama, and discovers him. And he's in Tashi Lumpo Monastery also. So if you're enumerating Panchen Lamas, starting from this story and not going backwards at all, if you're enumerating Panchen Lamas as the Ganden Putrang, the fifth Dalai Lama made a government, Ganden government, if you will, the central government of Tibet. And they recognize this order I'm talking about. First Panchen Lama is Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun. Second Panchen Lama is Panchen Losang Yeshe. Panchen Losang Yeshe is the person that we're second Panchen Lama that we're reading the book of tonight. Okay, so hope this is making some sense. So fifth Dalai Lama, his teacher is the first Panchen Lama, then he recognizes the second Panchen Lama. Tashi Lumpo Monastery, now I don't know who made these decisions. They backdate the Panchen lineage at least to Lama Tsongkhapa's time. So they come up with 3 before the first Panchen Lama. So then, according to Tashi Lumpo's newfound kind of lineage, not newfound, their assertion of lineage, they say that Panchen Lama was actually the 4th in a succession that started at Lama Tsongkhapa with Kirchhoff. Okay. So Tache Lompo recognizes 3 Panchen Lamas before this first Panchen Lama that was the 5th Dalai Lama's tutor. They backdate it. They go back posthumously. They say, first Panchen Lama was Kirtup Je, Master Kirtup Je. Lama Tsongkhapa is one of his root disciples. And then Master Sonam Chulong. And then Jawa Ensapa, Lozon Dundru, we know as the great hermit. So many stories about the great Master Ensapa. And then they recognize the 4th Panchen Lama as Panchen Lozon Chuji Jetsen, and then the 5th Panchen Lama as Panchen Lozon Yeshe. So just a little bit of history. So the Tache Lompo Monastery considers this Panchen Lama that we, call Panchen Lozon Chuji Jetsen to be the 4th Panchen Lama. And the Ganden Putrang, considers it to be the 1st Panchen Lama. So that's a little bit of history, the timeline. It's around the 5th Dalai Lama time. 5th Dalai Lama was either a tutor to or tutored by Panchen Lama. And then we see the history to go on from there. And I won't get into the kind of historical problem right now of the missing Panchen Lama, but feel free to look it up. But we're not here to discuss that tonight. But that's the Panchen Lamas were started with the 5th Dalai Lama deciding that his teacher was an emanation of Amitabha, and then it went from there. And then Tache Lompo, who the first Panchen Lama became the seat of that monastery, posthumously backdated the lineage of reincarnation Tolkus back to Kirtup Je. Okay. So I hope I made a little bit of sense out of that. But I thought, like I'm always saying, well, 1st or 4th, depending on how you number them, or 2nd and 5th, depending on how you number it. So now when I say depending on how you number it, you'll know what I mean, that some backdate to Lama Tsongkhapa's time and say Panchen Lama started at Kirtup Je during the time of Lama Tsongkhapa, and they even will say that he had previous incarnations also you can read about. But this specific first Panchen Lama started with Lama Tsongkhapa's student Kirtup Je, or first Panchen Lama starts at 5th Dalai Lama's time, depending on how you enumerate it. So that's that. So let's look at we have time to read this section, which I was hoping we would, from the Swift Path. So we're, again, frame it back. We're looking at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment. This is passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya to Master Asanga, down through the extensive deeds lineage to Master Salimpa and Lord Atisha and Master Dron Tompa, then down through lineage all the way down to us. We're so fortunate to have this because it's one of the 2 lineages of instruction that show you how to become a bodhisattva. So amazing. So we've been looking at this 7-point cause and effect instruction, starting with equanimity, then moving on to all sentient beings are your mothers. Now we're remembering their kindness. And let's read. The recollection of the kindness of all sentient beings. Having recognized, so again, this is a meditation instruction manual. So we've been using technical, all instructions are meditations. So let's start there. But this was written really specifically so that you would get it, that this is a meditation instruction. But that Lord Atisha came to show us that all of Buddha's teachings are just instructions for practice. But some instruction manuals are written in such a way that they beat you over the head with the fact that this is an instruction manual. Having recognized all sentient beings as having been your mother, while meditating on the Guru deity above your crown, reflect on their kindness. So Guru deity above your crown, we know that the Panchen Lama integrates Sutra and Tantra, and we're seeing our teacher as inseparable from our teacher is inseparable from our root deity. And this is something that Arya Manjushriya urged Lama Tsongkhapa to make sure that he was doing in order to see emptiness. So we're imagining our Lama who's inseparable from our root deity on our crown while we're thinking about this meditation. We're always trying to have power come from holy beings, have inspiration come from holy beings, to have that connection there to make the merit so much more magnificent and more connectable to what we'll need in the future. Not only has my mother been my mother in this life, she has been my mother countless times before, since beginningless lifetimes. In this life, she first took care of me with loving kindness in her womb. When I was born, she placed me on a soft mattress, held me up on her tips of her 10 fingers, and rocked me, pressed me against her warm body, and welcomed me with a loving smile, looked upon me with joyful eyes, wiped the mucus from my nose with her mouth, and cleaned away my feces with her hands. When I suffered a slight sickness, she endured greater hardship than if her own life had been threatened. If there had been any way to take away my pain, she would have done so unhesitatingly, sacrificing her life for mine. Disregarding misdeeds, suffering, disrepute in her own life, she compassionately supplied all my food and resources, which she toiled hard to procure. For either a son's marriage or monastic education or a daughter's dowry, with no sense of loss, she was able to give everything, saving for them the best of food, drinks, and clothes that she had offered and could afford. In short, my mother has endlessly ensured my happiness and well-being, protecting me from countless harms and sufferings as best she could. She is so kind. She did the best that she could. Meditate by visualizing each of these illustrations. Visualizing an abstraction cannot yield a realization and is thus a pitfall, since these points are the mother-like basis. So mother-like basis means that all the realizations from here are born from these. We have to get this right. It is fundamental to meditate on them until you have elucidated heartfelt experiential realizations. Do not be concerned if this takes some time. Have patience with your practice. Panchen Lama is so kind to say, this isn't going to be easy. It's going to be a journey, but it's worthwhile. Don't do abstract visualizations. It's a pitfall. These points that you're doing have to be real specific with specific beings that fall into these categories. When the kindness of your mother comes to mind, vividly transfer your experience to your father of this life and meditate. It's important to transfer the experience based on one person to the next and meditate on them one by one in a similar way. Next, meditate on a neutral sentient being. Visualize them clearly in front of you and think, with respect to one neutral sentient being, even though this person and I seem to be totally unrelated, they have been my mother countless times before, since beginningless lifetimes. Every time they were my mother, they nurtured me with kindness in the same way my mother of this life nurtured me with kindness. They are so kind. When you're in the supermarket, start to look at strangers. They are so kind. They nurtured me. Driving by, seeing squirrels, they are so kind. They nurtured me. Get your mind used to this idea that every single sentient being is your mother and nurtured you. This is how you change your mind and get to the point where Pabunka Rinpoche says you will, where you look at a bug and say, mother. When you have elucidated an experiential realization with respect to neutral sentient beings, meditate on foes in the following way by visualizing them clearly in front of you. Think with respect to one foe. Why do I now hold this person as my foe? They have been my mother countless times before. Since beginningless lifetimes, every time they were my mother, they endlessly endured my happiness and endlessly ensured my happiness and well-being, protecting me from countless harms and suffering. Whenever they were absent, I felt ill at ease. Similarly, whenever I was absent, they too felt ill at ease. There are uncountable instances of such mutual affinity. The current state of our relationship is due to bad karma. Were it not for this, they would only be my mother who nurtured me with kindness. When you have elucidated the experiential realization and kindness with respect to foes, reflect on the kindness of all sentient beings. This is so important. The current state of our relationship is due to bad karma, not due to them being intrinsically bad, due to bad karma, my bad karma. I'm having someone who's making it hard for me. That's not because they're intrinsically bad for me. It's because I've created causes and conditions to have someone come in my life that's difficult. And now, because I'm a magnet for them, now they're going to suffer in the future because their afflictions are acting out, and their intentions and intended actions are those which are imbued with anger and hostility and just those things that make us suffer and circle in cyclic existence over and over again. So these things are really medicine for our mind, and not just medicine for our mind so that we can, be more successful in society, medicine for our mind so that we can be more successful when we're sitting home alone and we're able to just be at peace instead of angry with everyone, instead of angry at the world, instead of blaming the world. We can blame the afflictions when we start to become more intelligent about what the real problem is. And when we start to blame the afflictions, we see we've got to get rid of ours and figure out how others can get rid of theirs too. And the only way we can do that is to become a Buddha. And the only way we can become a Buddha is to meditate and have our minds change and do the hard work and start to try to see that it is reasonable for me to see someone who the world would consider the worst person on the planet as someone I love, as someone I care for, as someone I have compassion for and don't want to see suffering. Thank you, everyone, for listening. It's so amazing we have these teachings to rely upon, and we have all of these ways when we're doing meditation and we start to get stuck. All of these tricks that these enlightened masters show us that we can use in order to not be stuck and keep moving forward in our spiritual evolution. And that's what it's all about. And because I know that that's why I, started coming to these teachings, was to figure out a bunch of stuff that I sure couldn't figure out. And these teachings really clarified so much for me. So thank you. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Luzandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. And again, the book that we've been reading, just so everybody knows, translated by Zegi To and the forward by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, The Swift Path by Panchen Losang Yeshe. Again, the second Panchen Lama, or fifth, depending on how you're enumerating them. Any mistakes I've made, may they be purified by the Vajrasattva mantra. Om Benzasattva Samaya Manipalaya Benzasattva Sina Bajijadida Meva Vazudagaya Meva Zubagaya Meva Anuraja Meva Savaziri Meva Raja Savakamazuja Mekidam Shian Kurum Ha Bhagavan Savatata Benzamome Muka Benzabama Samaya Safa Ah Om Ve. May we all be protected by Palden Lamo. Jorama Jorama Jojarama Junja Kalaraja Maramo Achadaja Junja Rulu Hong Jo Hong. And everyone keep Zopa Heron in their prayers. She's diagnosed with terminal bone cancer, part of our Jeffrey Hopkins group, a wonderful, wonderful being, part of the Shravasti Abbey for many years, not as an ordained person, as an attendant, as a cook, close with Venerable Chodron. Please keep her in your prayers. Very, very wonderful light for the world. So, yeah. Jorama, Jorama, Jojarama, Tunja Kalarachima, Ramo Achadacha, Tunja Rulo Rulo Hongjo. Oh. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase forevermore. May the correct view of emptiness that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase forevermore. Long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish-fulfilling jewel in our world, In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and help for beings, all powerful. Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And in a prayer of supplication to Namgyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, my root teacher, who's inseparable from Aryatara and who the whole merit field is possible because of. Homage to Namgyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Oma, Om, Oma. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Lord Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond, begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. Teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears, elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all your teachers passed away, understood the sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us and all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. May all the beings who were just on that flight that crashed meet with holy qualified Mahayana gurus. May all the beings who are tortured and tormented in the fires and the earthquake that happened in Tibet and all of the wars around the world, all of those beings whose minds are tormented and worried and who've passed away, may they meet with fully qualified Mahayana teachers and learn exactly what they need to learn to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience, so that they never, ever, 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 ever have to experience such desperation again. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.